Welcome back, Soulful Society, to Soulful of Wellness,
the multi-generational podcast brought to you by two functional imperfectionists
and certified coaches
who deliver tips to help you live your most authentic, balanced, and anxiety-free life.
Keeping both the mind and the body strong is key to having a happier and healthier life. We all know this. Mental and physical health are interconnected and can impact everything from how we feel to how we navigate life. Today, we're talking about ways your mind, body, and behavior tell you when you're stressed.
Thank you for joining us again for another week of wellness goodness. And if you're new to the Soulful Society, welcome and thanks for joining. We'd love to have you as a regular listener, so if you enjoyed today's podcast, please consider following so you'll get a new episode of wellness delivered automatically every Thursday.
If you haven't rated and reviewed Soulful of Wellness, we would so appreciate to have you help us out by tapping that 5th star and providing a few words of feedback about what you like about the podcast, what you don't like, what you'd like to see next. Stress is pervasive. She's not going anywhere, and certainly the majority of us are not going to drop out of the rat race to become monks and meditate all day. Sounds peaceful, sounds amazing, but simply not realistic.
When stress talks, you need to listen. Okay, so stress actually sneaks in very often silently. So today we're talking about how your mind and your body help you out by signaling that you are under stress.
An important reminder is stress will not derail you on your wellness journey. I know I often get afraid of that when I fall off the horse, have a setback, or a big stressor in my life. Stress is a part of your wellness journey. So hopefully that's a good reframe for you as you navigate this episode with us.
We're going to tell you 5 signals that your mind sends you, 12 from your body, and 5 behaviors to keep an eye out for. Some stress is really obvious and really necessary, and some stress is even healthy, the stress that gets you moving when you need to be moving. But we're talking today about the sneaky stressors, the ones that creep in kind of insidiously so we don't notice them so much, and when we do notice them we think yeah I got that all under control. So then they start growing, and then they get bigger, and then they're really impacting us, and maybe it should seem obvious but it's not. So 5 signals your mind sends: significant anxiety, sadness, overthinking, your moods change quickly, and you have poor concentration. 12 signs your body sends you: headaches, feeling lightheaded, faster breathing, your stomach's in knots, sweaty hands or trembling hands, increased muscle tension, dizziness, stiffness or soreness, especially across your shoulders, rapid heartbeat, sweating, nausea, a rise in blood pressure or maybe your blood sugar. And then 5 behaviors. You feel like you have no energy, just that complete lethargy. Restlessness or agitation. Self-soothing with drugs, alcohol, or tobacco. Difficulty concentrating. Yes, I know poor concentration was up in the mind section also. And sleep problems. If you are nodding your head to any of those, what's important? You can treat that sign from your body, that symptom. You can take the Advil when your head hurts, but just because the headache goes away or you're not feeling the headache because you took the Advil, if you don't find out and treat what's actually causing you the stress that caused the headache's just going to keep coming back. So go ahead and treat the symptom, but also unearth the stressor and deal with it.
Think of it like your body is the last line of defense telling you something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've talked about our vertigo in episodes past. That's when we've gotten to a 10 out of 10 stress level where our body is screaming at us to rest, to stop, to deal.
Right. We didn't listen to the earlier signs.
Mm-hmm. Which is why they're so important, because they compound on each other.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that wasn't body's go-to. There were significant signs leading up to that one that were ignored.
Yeah. Little breadcrumbs telling you, hey, something's really, really bothering you. Hey, something needs your attention. Let's deal with these emotions. Let's rest. Whatever it may be, the body is your best friend and like constantly trying to communicate with us and is wise beyond her years. So it's our job to listen, to tap into the little subtle reminders, the little subtle warning signs before they become screaming signs, hospital visits, debilitating vertigo, the list goes on and on.
Missing work, right, because you're so dizzy you can barely get out of bed to crawl to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Let's not get to that point.
Been there.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
We don't want that for you. In an ideal world, we want you to have the tools and the empowerment to know when stress is coming on, to heed the warning signs, to be able to manage it before it gets out of control.
Yeah, and it's a lot of listening.
Yeah.
You know how everybody says the best conversationalists are actually the best listeners?
Yes.
We owe that to our body.
Our body.
We can talk,
mm-hmm.
but the body has its own methodology of communicating. And even though it's not verbal,
mm-hmm.
we need and we owe it the respect to listen. Our body is on our team. Our mind is on our team. And it's team you trying to protect you and keep you safe. If you notice any of these symptoms cropping up in your life, what can you do? Because we've already decided we're not all going to run away to the monastery and spend all day meditating. That's not the lives we chose for ourselves. We chose these hectic, chaotic, fast-paced, go lives and all the richness they offer. So the first thing you need to do, obviously, is listen.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to dig in and look for patterns. Notice when these signs are coming up from your mind, from your body. Where are you? What's going on in your environment?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you around? What's happening around you? And start connecting the dots for these sneaky stressors, or these stressors that we thought we had under control, but our mind and body are telling us otherwise.
It finally clicks for me why people have mood journals. Have you seen these before?
I have not.
Oh, Erin, who did our habit tracker, she does mood journals and they're so beautiful. She does them once a month and it's a different theme. She draws it out in a bullet journal form and then color codes it. There's little signals for, happy, stress, bored, whatever. You can make your own key chart.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hearing you describe what you were describing about the mind and body is connecting patterns. That's why someone might opt for a mood journal, so that they can be able to tap in. What pattern am I observing? Every Tuesday. Looks like most Tuesdays I seem to be in a funk.
What's going on Tuesdays? Is it dinner with your parents? Is it the weekly chat with your boss? Is it like I'm just trying to make up what could possibly be something that you don't realize is actually stressing you the hell out? Because you think, well, that's just, part of my life. What can I do about that? I just deal with it. It's not my favorite thing.
Yeah,
oh, well.
And I think, sure, sometimes we really just don't realize what's stressing us underneath. But sometimes A lot of us in the chaos of life and the busyness and this digital age we're in, constantly on, constantly going, we are in a perpetual state of stress where our body, I'm sure in the wellness world, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've done a deep dive on wellness and you're on your journey already, and you've heard about the parasympathetic versus sympathetic nervous system. You've heard flight, fight, freeze, and that most of our bodies are experiencing the constant state of there's a tiger coming.
Yeah, the input, the barrage of input from all around.
Yeah, and because there's so much input, it can often be difficult to discern where the actual stressors coming from. What's the root cause? What is something that I really need to tackle?
I think that typically I have a pretty good handle on what my stressors are. My problem is more that I think I've got it all under control until I get these repeated signals telling me very clearly otherwise. Like, it's not half as under control as I think it is. It has either morphed or multiplied or in some other way gotten away from me. And I need to heed the signs, and I am, to my own credit, getting better about listening to my body, listening to my mind, because I had a very, very bad unhealthy habit of saying, shh, not now. Because these often happen at really inconvenient times. Like when you're sitting with your boss or in an important meeting. I mean, that is not a time to burst out crying. And if you find yourself feeling like you might, run off to the bathroom, get yourself under control, but you don't deal with it because you got to get back to the meeting. Okay, understandable. But you do have to deal with it at some point, or you're going to wind up right back at that same point.
Our bodies do so much for us. There's so much happening on a microscopic level, and I don't appreciate it enough. I've definitely ignored so many signs. There was actually a period of time in college where I was consciously ignoring. It was like almost a personality trait. It was like, whatever, health is whatever, I just want to have fun. It was, it was a wild time. It was a wild west. And then, of course, my body shut down in a very dramatic way. So it swings on either side of the pendulum. So if we're kind of like, if we're completely ignoring it, it'll come screaming, and it's taken me years to calm it down. Or if we're acknowledging the fact that our bodies have this incredibly intelligent, ancient communication system and network that we just listen to and respect, it'll respect us right back. It's a give and take relationship. We gotta listen.
Definitely. And don't be too hard on yourself, because I venture to guess everyone has been in very similar situations, especially when you're young and you haven't encountered the body really getting to the point where it can no longer function. And it's not that the body's not on your team. It's totally on your team. It can only take so much. And when you hit that point, if you ever hit that point, you've damaged the relationship. Like, talk about mutual trust
I know about that.
And respect. It's gone. And you don't know if you can trust, you want to, but it's already broken to a point that you have to rebuild. So we're advocating, if you haven't let it get to that point, don't. That's why we took the time to read out what might sound like really obvious signs, but sometimes hearing it, even though you're thinking, yeah, you're telling me feeling anxious is a sign I might be stressed, Kit. Yes, because sometimes you need to hear it and connect some dots for yourself and realize, wow, I really have been in denial, or I have been faking being more okay than I really am. Maybe it is time for me to sit down and do a little of the hard work, the uncomfortable work, so that in the end, I stay healthy, I stay well, and I'm able to do what I want to do in life and feel happy.
And I will add, if you are on the other side of the pendulum where you've broken down, your relationship with your body is completely broken down and in the ground, email us at sfowpodcast@gmail.com and I will design an episode exactly about that, because I've been there. And frankly, I'm still on that journey, even though I've come so far. So completely can understand where you're coming from there. It happens, and you can and you will bounce back.
Yes, the good news is you can rebuild that relationship, even if it seems like trust is so far gone that you will never be on the same team again. You will.
You will.
But you have to actively take the steps and do the work to make that happen.
Okay, let's talk about the mind signs. I know we've talked a little bit about the body signs. So the mind, this is really interesting, because moods that can change quickly. Like, I want to start there. I've been experiencing that lately, just in moving and buying a house. It's such a wonderful, positive stress, but it also just frankly stresses me out, you guys. Like, I don't like living in an unsettled situation, especially as an imperfectionist. Living in the middle of a project is like my nightmare.
Yeah, a really scary place to be.
Yeah. and the challenge it is to make decisions. I know we talked last week about perfectionism and indecisiveness. So it's just a whole bunch of stress. It's like if you were baking a stress cake. I think I understand why moving is a big life stressor, even though it's usually positive. So moods changing quickly. I call this like my teenage self. So we all have an inner child, right? We've talked about that on many episodes. We all have an inner teen too. And the way I relate to mine is when I'm having those crazy mood swings. And that is really hidden, unaddressed anxiety.
That's a really interesting way to think about it, because your teenage years are stressful in their own right. Not the adulting stresses, but the hormones rampaging through your system, new feelings, new emotions, like all that unsettled stuff that comes in the changes of the teenage years. So different reasons, but similar ways of feeling. I get that correlation.
You get me.
So what would you say for people who are listening now to what their mind's telling them and realizing, hey, I kind of am doing that rapid mood changey thing lately?
I would say that's another sign that you need to slow down and take a step back and evaluate your self-care routine.
Okay.
For me, I usually can trace it back to there's not enough time that I'm focusing on relaxing and calming down my nervous system. So I start to pull tools from my toolbox that I know calm me down. Like even just brewing a cup of tea, or taking a lavender soaked salt bath, or doing 20 minutes of yoga, or journaling.
So giving yourself a timeout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like an inner teenage timeout. It's like, hey, have you just... It's not even sitting with your feelings, although sometimes feelings will come out when you're in the bath or you're journaling. It really is just, all right, you need to unplug and recharge. You need to remove the technology and add in something that's grounding.
That sounds like a wonderful way to start rebuilding that relationship
Totally.
with yourself, by giving yourself this time to say, okay, I'm going to sit peacefully and think or journal, and all you repressed thoughts that I had to push down in the moment because it wasn't the right time or the place, you now have your opportunity. Surface. Let's look at you. Let's process you.
Yes, the most profound downloads and growth we get is in solitude. Always, always. And so if we're not purposely putting that time and scheduling that time, then, at least in my experience, then the feelings just come out as mood swings. I'm, snapping. I'm stressing out at little things that I know are totally innocuous. and don't deserve stress. So take that little time for solitude, and that can help you reconnect to your mind.
The one in the mind category that stood out to me was sadness.
I know.
That's an interesting one because it's not one that I typically associate with feeling particularly stressed. So that's one that in the future, when I have those times that I'm like, why do I feel sad right now? I don't have anything to be sad about. And I do remember thinking exactly that thought pattern in the past. But knowing this now, I'm going to spend a little more time looking for the pattern behind it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I guess sadness is just coming out because you're right. There's a pattern there. There's something that's not addressed.
Exactly.
It reminds me of the movie Inside Out, where the feelings are personified. Have you seen this?
I know
Pixar
what you're talking
movie?
about. I have not seen it.
Okay. It's such a classic. And sadness is her own character. And like every feeling that we have deserves that relationship with us. Because the feeling is trying to communicate something to us. It's the same thing as the body. The feelings that are showing up they're trying to tell us something. Something needs our attention.
Right. And we can't get rid of the ones that we don't like, that are uncomfortable.
Unfortunately.
You can't just say like, oh no, sadness, you can't live here. Once again, it goes back to it's part of life. If we could get rid of it and never have to experience it, deal with it, great. But that's not the life we live.
For overthinking, that's a classic. A classic symptom of being stressed, because if you think of the opposite, you think about intuition and quieting the mind. And I would say like the best tools for that are anything that grounds you, whether it's physically putting your feet in the dirt, in the sand, wherever, or if it's, a particular movement, if it's dancing, if it's journaling. It's kind of essentially about uncovering what self-care practices work for you.
Yes, with overthinking, as you're describing, anything to break the pattern, because the overthinking will often become a cycle. The same thoughts just looping through with maybe slight changes so they're disguised as a new thought, but really they're not. Just break the cycle. Do something, dance, move, get outside. I always tell myself when something's bugging me, like the song that gets stuck in your head, I always think, well, here's the upside to ADHD. As soon as the next thing pops into my brain, this one will be gone. All I need to do is stop seeing the reminder or hearing the reminder. Give it 10 minutes. I won't remember this was driving me nuts.
So true. When I think of overthinking, I think of in the head and flighty and heady. And so the opposite is grounded, earth.
Yes.
Rooted.
And flowing. Like overthinking is this weird, chunky, mechanical,
circular. So to wrap it up with behaviors, no energy as a sign of stress makes me realize how stressed I've been.
Well, you have no energy because you had all the energy until you wasted it on these not helpful, not useful, sometimes unhealthy things. And so that energy did get used, just not for anything productive. So, of course, you have none left.
Right. It got used up during the overthinking. It got used up when your gut started to digest things slower because you're stressed out. And so, like, all the systems are interconnected. That's what we mean when we talk about holistic wellness, like the whole person, mind, body, spirit. So look out for a sign from each category, I would say, because stress isn't just going to pick one. She's going to attack you with mind, body, spirit symptoms.
I have a word about the self-soothing or the bad habits, the masking habits, like the drug, alcohol, tobacco, sex. Okay, people use them because they are super, super effective in the immediate, short term. The problem with them is they don't solve anything. So when you wake up hungover the next day, all the stresses are still there. All the problems that caused you to need that escape when you just couldn't deal anymore and you're like, I don't care, just get me out of here. It's still there. All of us on our wellness journeys, we have two different bags of tools. One's full of healthy things that might take a little longer to be effective. They might require a little more effort, but in the end, they're going to work better and be good for us. And in the other bag are these unhealthy ones that are so tempting because they're quick and they're easy, and damn, do they work in the moment. But ultimately, you're at least where you started if you didn't just go and make everything even worse. So in those moments, it's really just a matter of consciously choosing, ultimately, what do I want for myself and what do I need for myself, and saying, tempting as it is, I'm not digging into that unhealthy bag of tools. I'm going to go with the healthy. I'm going to do the work, and I'm going to feel good about myself.
So as we wrap up, we want to remind you what's important is treat the sign, but also treat the stressor. Dig in, get curious. Your mind, your body, and your behaviors are communicating with you.
When you recognize the signs of stress, you can go into your healthy tool belt and fix the problem.
Thanks for joining us for another week of Wellness Goodness. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. That's how the Soulful Society continues to grow.
Huge soulful hugs to all of you. Thank you for listening. Peace, love, and light.
Peace, love, and light. The Soulful of Wellness hosts are certified health and wellness coaches. This podcast is intended to inform and entertain listeners on their wellness journey. This podcast is meant to enhance, not replace, listeners' care from doctors, therapists, or other medical providers.